back to TFC Reviews, and today we have another Mazda. We have a Mazda CX-30. So, on the smaller side of things that we typically do, and we've done a Mazda in the past. We love Mazdas. We did the CX-90 several months back and couldn't give it enough praise. And, spoiler alert, this one deserves a lot of praise too. So, this one here is the Mazda CX-90's baby brother. It is the smallest SUV, subcompact SUV in the Mazda lineup, and yeah, it definitely is a lot smaller. But one thing on this drive that I noticed today was that sometimes I miss having a smaller vehicle. You know, if it's just you, then it's actually a lot more maneuverable and a lot easier to drive around town. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start up our Mazda CX-30. Nice push button start here. Got a nice little startup screen there. And hopefully we're going to turn down this air con. There we go. So initial driving impressions I had with this, it's very similar to the Mazda CX-90, just we'll call it the 2/3 80-90% there, probably more like the 80 or 75% there if we're gonna be realistic. So it isn't a very big vehicle at all. We'll go and get in the back seat there and eventually and show you that, and if we can. No, those are just jokes. But it is a lot more cramped. Again, this is a subcompact, so knowing that's a subcompact, accepting that's a subcompact model, you can definitely get around a few things because, you know, ultimately, you know, it's not a Suburban, it's not a large SUV, and with that, it, I think, does very good for what it is. It drove in typical Mazda fashion, very nice, and had a lot of praise for this one. So we'll go ahead and get into the history of the Mazda CX-30, and from there, I'll go over a couple of little features, some things that are not really there compared with the competition, but sometimes those things really aren't that important to you at the end of the day either, and could just be kind of seen maybe as like gimmicks and things just to kind of swoon you in the moment to go ahead and make your buying decision, but then down the road you're like, did I really need that? Or, you know, driving dynamics, what Mazda's really known for, really what's important, you know, at the end of the day. So me personally, I love good driving dynamics in a vehicle, how it drives, how it feels, how you feel the road, the steering wheel feel. All that is so super important to me when I'm out purchasing a vehicle or I'm looking to decide what will be our next vehicle. So with all that, let's give a little bit of history here on the Mazda CX-30. Introduced in North America in 2020, the Mazda CX-30 was initially conceived to sit in between the Mazda CX-3 and the Mazda CX-5. We'll have to check. I don't even think they make the Mazda CX-3 anymore. And then later on they came out with the Mazda CX-50, which kind of sat between the 5 and the 9, and then they came out with the 90. Mazda's been kind of funny with like their different ranges and models over the last few years, but this one, it does give you, it's a little bit larger slightly than that old Mazda CX-3, definitely smaller than the Mazda CX-5. And then if you're looking at competitors in its class, it competes with things like, I believe the Chevy Trailblazer, Chevy Trax possibly, the Kia Kona. We're in a Mazda, it's been a long day. And vehicles like that. So definitely solidly fits in that subcompact class. And the thing you're always going to give the Mazda though are those driving dynamics. So like where other ones might have more tech, a little bit more size maybe in the subcompact class, you're definitely Mazda's definitely going to make that up for you in how the vehicle actually drives and feels on the road. And being again a subcompact, it is a little bit harder to really dial in driving dynamics and make it feel a little bit more upscale, so it's not bouncing all over the road and you feel every single little road imperfection. Mazda's done a really great job on that. It's got done with about 170 mile little road trip, and this one, it felt comfortable, especially for a vehicle of its size. So went over the history a little bit. Came out in 2020. Hasn't really been refreshed too much since. Maybe been some little trim things here and there that they've updated, but overall, exterior styling is pretty much the same as it was back in 2020. And yeah, so it's probably due for a refresh here soon. Smaller guys like Mazda, and as we talked about the Volvo, end up having to have their model runs go a little bit longer, and with that you do get this very, what I think, fairly timeless design on the inside. It's going to age very, very well. It's designed in a very upscale, what you expect maybe like in an Audi or something. And with that, I think that's another thing that sets Mazda apart from the competition a bit, where you're going to get something that's not, full of gimmicks and a bunch of flash and just wild design. You're going to get something that's very designed well. They do continue the same kind of design language throughout their entire lineup, so it's nice and cohesive. So if you do step up into a larger model, it's very familiar to you. And yeah, so with all that, we'll go ahead and get into some of the materials. So definitely you're getting nicer materials on here. A nice padded dash, no harsh plastics. This is all very nice padded material. Usually in this subcompact class, you're going to get lots of cheap hard plastics here. This is all, and that's okay. But up here, you're getting very nice materials on this model here. So we did get we'll have to put it up there. It's not the base. It's the one that starts around $29,000-$30,000. I think it's their preferred model, which is the 2.5 liter non-turbo model, putting out about 191 horsepower, which, go ahead and take a mental note. Make sure that when you are test driving one of these, or if you do have one, you'll get a lot more fun out of your driving. I can't say this about everyone, but if you switch that over to sport mode, so your little switch is right there, it does come alive a lot more than it does when it's not in sport mode. So most sport modes are supposed to do that. Yes, that's why it's in the name, but this one actually does adjust some of that transmission and throttle mapping for you, and it does hold the gears a little bit longer. It makes it a little bit more entertaining to drive, a lot more entertaining to drive. It felt a little doggy, slow when it was not in sport mode. So take a note there. And yeah, so at that 191 horsepower, there is an upgraded model that has significantly more horsepower and torque. We'll throw it up there. And that one is a little bit more pricey. I think the starting price is about $10,000 more than what you're getting in this one. And honestly, I don't think you need it. I think it's, if you want something that's going to be sporty and more flashy, then go buy a Miata, a used one or something, or go ahead and just get the larger SUV with the more horsepower. So I think that would be, better money spent than spending an extra $10,000 on the turbocharged version of this. Unless, of course, you just absolutely love the design and size and all that, and you want something that's faster than what you're getting, in this model here. So, what else? A lot of this we already went over. Check out that Mazda CX-30 video. It's very, very similar. One thing, like with Mazdas in general, being the smaller guy, a lot of your infotainment, in fact all your infotainment, especially in these lower trim models, is going to be controlled here with this rotary. There's hit and miss feelings about that, so go and zoom out a little bit if we can see that. And there we go. So you have your buttons here. You have a nice home button, you have a back button, and then a nav and a music hard key buttons there. Your radio tuning is right there, so it's nice that it's all right here. And then also you're getting your physical gauge buttons there, which if you watch my channel before, I love physical gauges. You should always have physical buttons. It's been a long day, so I love physical buttons. I think that especially for climate control, any kind of primary function, you should still have physical buttons instead of trying to dig through some sort of menu up here. This is not touchscreen. And so you'll hear some, it's 50-50 in the comments whether people like, having this as touchscreen or this is okay for them. It's a little bit of an older design where you had to use these rotaries all the time. But one thing is, you don't get a bunch of nasty, grimy little fingerprints all over your screen there, which is, to me, a win. And you do get used to this. It can be a little clunky at times, and then we'll go ahead and hook up Apple CarPlay here in a minute so you can see how that all looks, because then navigating through CarPlay here on this can be, it's a learning curve, I will say that. So with that, we can go ahead and go in a couple of these menus here. So you got all your entertainment stuff there, phone, navigation. One thing with these Mazdas is that you do have to get a SD card, so it's SD card based navigation. It doesn't come down from Google. It's not standard on these trim packages. You can check and see if it does come standard on the higher trim packages, but their point of view is that, well, most people have an Android or a Apple phone, so you don't necessarily really need to include navigation on your models these days. If you need it, you can pay a little extra for it, or if you really want it, you can pay a little extra for it. And that's really what I've seen that their point of view is, on that. And again, being a smaller guy, they got to try and find anything that they can do to get a little bit of margin out of you to make sure that they stay profitable. So with that, it's a very simple entertainment infotainment system. And again, sometimes with the gimmicks and stuff, people tend to give this as a ding to them. At the end of the day, I don't care. I think more simplicity is actually kind of needed, and I'm not that old, so take that. I think it's gotten way too complex. There's so many, you don't need to configure every single little function of the car just to add it as a selling benefit. Having something that just starts, drives, can change the temperature, can shift, figure out how to shift, manually if you want to, turn up and down the radio. Those are all really the main things in driving safely, of course, and the main things you should be focusing on while you are driving. So all these like little kind of configurability things, they're cute, they're fun for maybe the first time, but how often are you really changing your ambient lights, color hues, or how many times are you going in to change how long your vanity lights or your exterior lights turn on and off. It's just so many different things. And then don't even talk about the driving dynamics that are like in a BMW's infotainment center. It's insane. So it just becomes too much. And if that's what you're selling on, then you're really not selling anything. You're just selling fluff. So let's get back out of fluff. Let's get back into this Mazda CX-30. And again, I mentioned probably for the 11th, 12th, 13th time that it is a subcompact. So you have to realize that, if you are looking in this category, there are going to be some concessions for you. I saw some comments out there that did not rate this model as highly as some of the reviewing companies did, or even just in the normal ownership reviews. And a lot of them were kind of related. It's well, you're buying a subcompact. It's not a Mercedes. It's not even a Camry. It's a subcompact SUV, which SUV in general these days I think is a very loose term. It feels very much like a lifted, very slightly lifted hatchback, which is fine. At the end of the day, you get a little bit more utility out of that than you would in a sedan. And I think that it ends up being just kind of like marketing, calling it SUV because everyone wants an SUV, so might as well. It does give you some sport, does give you some utility. It is a vehicle, so it works. But in the true classic sense and name of an SUV, this is not a truck-based, potentially can go off-road anywhere, everywhere. This is really not that. This is something that's pretty engaging to drive, more like a lifted hatchback, and kind of a hot hatch if you do get that turbocharged model. So keep that in mind when you're buying one. If you're cross shopping these, if you're looking at that Chevy Trax or even, I want to say a Trailblazer too, but I'll have to look on that. It might actually be a little bit bigger. Or the Blazer. GM has a few models out there. I think even Buick has a small subcompact these days. But I do know, like with Hyundai Kia, they have a Kia Kona, they have a Hyundai something, and Ford, I guess, they had that little tiny mini Escape, Eco something, but I think they discontinued that. We'll put that one up there too. But in the category, as far as how these things rate, it does do a decent job. Like, Edmunds gave like a 7.5, mainly, knocking it for things, and these are features that are all, I think, very personal to people. So, knocking it for cargo capacity, which we did bring up on the Mazda CX-30. So if you do need to haul a lot of things, this is probably not the best option for you. If you need to haul a lot of things, a subcompact SUV, hot hatch, regular hatch, whatever you want to call it, probably isn't the best vehicle for you though either. You should probably be looking at something more in the used market if you need to haul a lot of things and this price point fits your budget. But on things like driving dynamics, that X factor, fit and finish, just the overall upscale feel of everything, the Mazda CX-30 does do pretty well. And Mazdas in general have always done pretty well when it comes to those types of things and those characteristics. So driving dynamics and upscale look and feel are important to you, then definitely the Mazda should be at the top of your list when you're looking in this category and you're looking at a subcompact SUV. Okay, what else can we talk about in our Mazda CX-30? A few things we did not like. Well, it's a subcompact SUV. It would not be my first choice for a primary vehicle. If you're with somebody, if you have more than one kid, it's just really too small for me personally. But again, it can't help that it's in this class. It can't help it being what it is. It is a subcompact SUV. So with that, if it's a vehicle just for me, I will say I did not mind having a smaller vehicle this time around. It drives nice, but we're talking about things we don't like. It's hard with a Mazda to talk about things like you don't really like, because everything generally is pretty good with a Mazda. So again, like some of the infotainment, it does take a little bit getting used to. It's not what we driven that's probably a little bit better. Most infotainments these days kind of like actually aren't that great. Even what's seen great, like from Hyundai Kia, after a few years and a couple thousand miles, they start getting very laggy and really aren't that great. But as far as like being able to like operate it, and as far as being able to operate it, it's pretty easy. It's intuitive enough. The Hyundai Kia ones are intuitive enough. The Ford ones are intuitive enough. The GM ones are intuitive enough. The Volvo was not. That was one that I did not like with the infotainment. As far as having enough power and get up and go, like I said, it has about 191 horses on this 2.5 liter. And it was fine. Like I said, keep it in sport mode. You'll be happy. It does put out a lot more horsepower than the Chevy competitor, which I believe only has like a 3-cylinder as its base, maybe only engine. This is at least a 4-cylinder. What else? There isn't a lot that I didn't like about it. Actually, if I was shopping in this category, would have to give it a look. There are some little features that I don't want to say they go cheap on, but you got some blanks there on this model, so I don't know what kind of other options may be included, that you might be getting on something else. But you got all your standard suite of safety suites. So you got lane keep assist, you have very good adaptive cruise control. Go ahead and throw that up there. And I like how they do it actually here too, on this. See, this is a digital screen, so at first look you think it's so old, they have gauges. Well, no, actually, the center gauge here is actually a full digital, screen, which it's not very configurable. You just get a speedometer, some driving information there, and then just a digital speedometer there, which eh, uh, I think it's fine. It'd be cool maybe if they did some sort of like map or something there, maybe. But for a subcompact entry level kind of vehicle, I think this looks very clean. I love how they actually incorporate the same design of the speedometer analog look on the match and feel the other true analog gauges there. And hopefully it is one less thing, a cheaper thing that will ultimately go out over time, but versus replacing your whole gauge here, and at least still you have your important stuff there with physical gauges, with your temperature, your fuel, and your tachometer there. Very simple steering controls. Again, for a subcompact, that's I guess one thing I'm kind of like mind blown away about the level of equipment. The granted, this is a little bit more upgraded, but even with the base model, you get a lot of standard equipment too. This one here, you're getting your dual zone climate control. You have your heated seats. These are not leather, but they are a very nice leatherette that I am getting more and more challenged with deciphering these 2020s and beyond leatherette seats. They have gotten so much better than what they used to be. They used to feel so cheap and vinyl-y in the past, but these here aren't bad. So that is an option here on this preferred version. I believe on the base you just get cloth seats. You do get a sunroof on this model, so that's kind of nice. That it's not panoramic, but the roof on the subcompact isn't very big. Basically, the sunroof just basically fits into itself over that rear passenger space, and then you're already in the trunk, which is very short, and then there's no more vehicle left. So probably couldn't fit really much of a bigger sunroof on here anyway, so I think that works fine. And also at the end of the day too, this here is going to probably be a little bit more long lasting than one of those giant panoramic roofs. Less seals, less plastic pieces to break, so over time this will probably be a little bit more repair friendly than one of those giant panoramic roofs anyway. What else? So we talked about materials, little differences. You do get a lot of standard equipment on this, and yeah, that's kind of what's been really nice. Like Mazda has always kind of set the game since the 2000s with giving you a little bit more of a premium experience in this kind of mainstream brand. This isn't like a Mercedes, this isn't a BMW. They're not positioned as a luxury vehicle. It's not even positioned with like a premium really vehicle. Like it's not like a Lexus or an Infiniti or anything like that. It's the same thing as price wise for the most part, the same as like your Toyotas, your Hondas, even your Fords and your Chevys and your Hyundais and your Kias. And they've always been since the 2000s, I'll say, like when they introduced that came with the Mazda 6 and the Mazda 3, they're a little bit more premiumized, it's been a long day again, than what you get from the competition. And so that does help set them apart. They do end up having a little bit better, not even a little bit, a lot better driving dynamics, but where you do end up sacrificing is some cargo space sometimes. Definitely you're not getting all the latest gimmicks and things that you would normally get on your Hyundais and Kias especially, but even like stuff from GM too. You're definitely not getting all that glitz and all that light show and things that are very distracting from like, what does a vehicle actually drive like? Will this vehicle actually last? Will it depreciate? Like all those things. Those are the things at the end of the day that truly matter. So with that, we're going to go ahead and check out that back seat and see just how much space is actually back there and why I feel that this is a really good look if you're just a single person, or maybe if you have a really small wife or partner or whatever, or maybe just one small kid. And we'll see that reason here right in a bit when we check out that back seat. All right, everybody, I faced my fears of closing that front door. Left those keys right there, so just in case the child locks are on or something, or I don't know. It's the last thing I want to deal with if I end up getting locked out of a car and having to call Avis and deal with all that. So after a long work day, that's not on my vision board of dealing with. What's also not on my vision board is ever having to ride in the back seat of this. I have this seat pushed back pretty much in my normal driving position, and you can see, what's nice, I guess, is that the rake, it seems like it's pretty steep here on the seats. I don't know if they end up reclining or not. We'll check real quick. If not, we can put it up there as an overlay. I don't feel a reclining option, so we're kind of stuck here, but maybe in an Uber for some 10-15 minute drive, I could sit back here. Definitely not on a long road trip. I would not want to be next to a passenger in this space. It's not big enough. But I think they do make the best they can, with whatever room they do have in the subcompact category. And you do get some nice air conditioning controls back here, which I don't think you get actually in the base model. So that's a little bit of an upgrade. What you're not getting, that you are getting in this model versus the base model. So you get that. You have your leatherette seats back here too, and then we'll show what the cargo area looks like when we do our last walk around. But because the rear hatch slopes so much, you are cutting into a lot of your cargo space. And with that is one of the things that they did get, was that compared to some of the competition, you do have a lot more cargo room, especially with the seats folded down. But again, if you're not hauling a bunch of stuff, which, as we already said, if you need to haul a bunch of stuff, then, well, you shouldn't be looking at subcompacts. You should be looking at large SUVs, transit vans, those ProMaster Ram things, if your main goal is hauling stuff, or even a truck, something like that maybe. But if you're not doing that hauling stuff on a daily basis, you really don't need something like that as a daily driver. And again, if you don't have a lot of people back here all the time, then who cares really what the back seat space is like, because you're not sitting back here. So with that, we're going to go back up front and wrap up this video. Okay, so we're back now, back up front, back where we actually have some space. And yeah, so this Mazda CX-30, I think it deserves a great look if you are looking at something in this category of subcompact SUVs. Again, if it's just you, if you have a very small partner, maybe it's the appropriate size. What it has actually, in the sales data, when you look at the demographics of people actually buying it, is either first-time car buyers or someone fresh out of college, and it's just either as a single person, or even empty nesters looking to downsize a bit too. So with that, the upfront space was, it's roomy enough, and it's gonna be bigger than what was that one thing it's a Corolla Cross. This thing I think probably actually competes with that. So the Mazda CX-30, I do believe, competes with the Corolla Cross as well, and that, I really don't know who's buying those. Those are weird. They're I think it's people who, Toyota's always super reliable, and they're probably just as reliable with that Corolla Cross. But I think that's really all you're getting in that Corolla Cross. It was so tiny up front. So with that, I can put up the stats. Maybe it was a perception thing, but I'm curious to actually see with that Corolla Cross just how comparable the front seat space is compared to that. But if you're not hauling a lot of people in the back, if you don't have a lot of stuff that you need to fold on the seats and haul that kind of stuff, then this definitely could be a good vehicle for you to look out at. It's going to give you a little bit of fun. that zoom that Mazda's known for, and give you a little bit of style, you know, too, and a little bit of that, you know, a little bit more upscale of an experience than like you're gonna get like in your typical Chevy, even your Hyundai Kias. Like they know where to like put the nicer materials where they need to, but when you start kind of peeking up underneath the hood a little bit, or you know, touching the doors below the window switches, then you start to feel some of that cheapness. And then especially, I've always mentioned, if you don't get those upgraded packages on those Hyundai Kias, they use the cheapest materials on those steering wheels, which it just feels horrible. So this here is a nice, you know, believe it's leather wrapped. We'll go ahead. I think so. In this package, you do get a leather wrapped steering wheel. It felt nice. It's actually, you know, pretty thin, but feels, you know, grips the hand well. And then, you know, same thing like with this, with that leather wrapping there on the gear selector. I think that pretty much wraps it up with this Mazda CX-30. So it is a vehicle you should look at. Gets that, you know, decent gas mileage too that you would, you know, expect from this class. And anything else left? There's people all just walking around today. I think that's it. So thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the Mazda CX-30. Do you own one? Would you buy one? Are you looking at them? What questions do you have on them? Throw that all in the comments. Throw me a like if you obviously liked the video. And then also, if you didn't like the video, well, please let me know in the comments, and I will try to go ahead and incorporate some of that feedback in future videos. And be sure to also subscribe to the channel. It all helps with the algorithm and the performance, you know, of the channel. And as I always said, like here on the Fitter Commuter, I do like to do these videos because cars are basically your number one expense, besides housing. And so much can go wrong in your financial life if you end up overspending or purchasing that vehicle that may not be the best one for you. You may not have the best financing for it, and it may not last you as long. It may depreciate really quickly, or you just may not like it, and you're just throwing car payments at something that you just don't really like. So there's so many things that, like, when you go on a test drive and stuff, that you could miss. And so I hopefully give you a little bit more on these videos that you're not going to get on your standard test drive, or even see like in standard YouTube reviews, where things like where, you know, you're just focusing on features and stats and that sort of stuff. So I try to give kind of like a lived-in-ish experience with these, as that I do end up living with the, you know, these for a decent amount of time, more than your standard road trip, when I do have to rent a vehicle. And so I do like to go ahead and give my 8 cents on whether it is a decent buy, in my opinion, or something you should just stay away from. So with all that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.